Welcome to my podcast, Today's Dream, Tomorrow's Reality. My name is Vickiepoole. I'm a master transformational coach and hypnotist specializing in habit change. And this podcast is sponsored by the Enlightened Peach. And it's all about embracing our mosaic life. And some of you may ask, what is a mosaic life anyway? Well, it is recognizing that all the pieces of our life, the good, the bad, the indifferent, have all come together to make us who we are. Change any one thing and we are different. With that in mind, I invite you to embrace your perceived imperfections and celebrate who you are. This podcast is unedited and raw, just like life. And I'm your host, and I have a special guest that I'll introduce in just a moment. And I'm so excited to have her on here. But in the meantime, I would love to ask you to do me a solid, and that is to leave a comment, leave a question, to like, subscribe, and share. So now let's get started. So this beautiful lady rocking the 70s hair, or is it 80s
Are we
hair?
on video?
Yep.
I didn't know we were recording video too. I thought it was going to be mostly audio, but that's okay.
Well, some of it is audio, some of it is video. So you know what that hair is. It's kind of a new wave of maybe a Farrah Fawcett in a little bit. It's just beautiful, beautiful. I remarked on her hair when we first got on here. But I know this is Kryssa. And I know her because she is also a hypnotist, and I'm actually in the middle of taking her course right now. I've got several certifications under my belt, and I have been kind of watching her, and I've seen her on several of the other hypnotist sites and everything. And I just got so fascinated with some of the stuff that she does that it was like, I've got to dive in. And so I'm super excited to talk to her, and I even want to ask her about things that have nothing to do with hypnosis. But it's just, if you don't mind, just tell them a little bit about you, because that doesn't really do you justice, I don't think. But just share a little bit, and then we'll get to the conversation.
Yeah, sure. So let's see. Professionally, yes, hypnotist and founder of Quantum Journeys Hypnosis Academy. And I also have a bunch of certifications under my belt over there on that wall. And now it feels silly that I've spent so much time learning all of these tools, because stumbling upon Quantum Journeys hypnosis, it's like kind of inclusive of everything. You don't really need to have a bunch of, anyway. But okay, so professionally speaking, my background academically is in applied psychology, but prior to being a hypnotherapist, I was a chef.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Over 2 decades, actually. Yeah.
Nice. I want to come eat at your house.
Well, and I actually do like cooking for people again now, but I didn't for a while because that was my job. And so, on my days off, I was like, nope, no dinner parties. Don't invite me over if you're expecting me to cook. I have 4 kids. I have 2 millennials, and then I have 2 zennials. So 4 kids. The last 2 are sort of twins. They're 22 now. I was a single mom for most of those 32 years of raising kids. I am an animal lover, and I used to commune with nature spirits as a little girl, and I was told that they were imaginary friends, but I have come to believe that I think they were in fact nature spirits. So,
yeah.
There you go. That's my intro.
Okay, beautiful, beautiful. Well, one of the things that you had put in your form that I sent you, and that there's 2 that I have to ask you about. So one of them is, what the hell is a neurospicy brain? You said that's what you have.
Yes. So the buzzword for the past, I don't know, 5-6 years has been neurodivergent. And that is people that are not neurotypical. And there could be lots of different varieties of this neurodivergence. I am self-diagnosed on the low end of the autism spectrum. So very functional, but definitely still hit all the marks, right? but also diagnosed by a clinician with ADHD. And I think I've dropped the H. Now I'm just ADD, unfortunately. I kind of miss the H part, the hyperactive part. I got more done. But so, there's like a few different things going on the neural level. And so the catchphrase that I use is neurospicy. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Beautiful. And
And because of that, I help my clients who also have, neurodivergent brains to be able to experience hypnosis, because not all hypnosis takes into account, you know, how somebody might not respond to a traditional induction, for example, if they're autistic. If they're autistic, they tend to have a very literal mind.
mm-hmm.
And depending on their levels of visualization, there might also be some aphantasia going on there, which I also have. So if you're using a visual induction and you're telling them like, and now you can see yourself walking down the stairs, feeling your feet touching each step, many autistic people would be like, I don't see that at all. I don't feel that at all. And it would cause them to then distrust the trance and
Right.
not actually experience hypnosis.
Yeah. One of the things that I do, and like I haven't finished your course yet, so I may be saying something that goes totally against it, but if I am, we'll talk about that later.
Okay. No
Um,
censorship here for me either.
That's right. That's right. But one of the things that I do is, as we do the pre-induction, the talk and everything, is I start asking them. So when I ask you, can you to see an apple? Can you see an apple? Or do you just imagine an apple? And then I'll tell them, when we talk about a vacation that you've been on before, if I say, remember this vacation, do you actually see moving pictures or do you just feel the memories of this thing? And so I ask them those kinds of questions to kind of get an idea of how I need to move forward in my dialogue, right? So does that go along with what you're saying, or is that?
So in quantum journeys hypnosis, we call it VACK, VAC. Most hypnotists might just call it VAK, but I call it VACK. So you have visual, auditory, cognitive, and kinesthetic. And the cognitive is the type that I have. So I do not have visual pictures. When I close my eyes, I cannot picture an apple, but I cognitively have the comprehension of an apple. Like the symbol of apple is available to me without the visual construct.
Right, right.
So that's the cognitive. I'm also very kinesthetic and auditory. I would say visual is my lowest sense. So yeah, we do that too, but we don't do the tests necessarily. We just listen to as they're talking. So when somebody says, oh, and I really feel blah, 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 well, they're using feel. So chances are they're kinesthetic, or when you're saying something and then they respond with like, yeah, I hear you. Chances are they're auditory,
Yeah.
And if they start a lot of sentences with what I think, they're probably cognitive. And so you're just going to be, paying attention to the different words that they use as they're talking about their experiences.
Okay.
But there's nothing wrong with doing those tests. I think that's
Yeah.
great.
To me,
Just
it just helps me to dive into it. And I think for a few people, they've said that they liked me asking them those questions because then they were more aware of how they were doing things. So yeah. But one of the things
we also have a way of skirting that entirely too, which is that we don't ask anybody to picture or see anything ever.
Right.
We say, what are you experiencing? Or
True.
if we do say see, we're like, what are you seeing, feeling, hearing, experiencing?
Okay.
I'll often use the phrase, dial all of your senses wide open and tell me what you're experiencing. And then just by how they respond, I know which senses we're talking about. So yeah, because when somebody tells me to see something and I don't see it, because the very first hypnosis trainer I had, her induction was 100% visual. And I struggled to get into a trance state. So here I was becoming a certified hypnotherapist, but I myself had never successfully been hypnotized. And so I felt like a total fraud.
Right.
I was like, how is this something I can do for other people if I can't even experience it for myself? But it turns out that what was going on was that I was being pulled out of the trance. I was not being invited into the trance because the wrong senses were being
Yeah.
called up
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So one of the things that I've noticed by um, looking at your social media that I really want to ask you about is, do you do homesteading?
No,
No,
but
I
I want
swear.
to.
All right. So maybe you were posting something about you wanted to, but I could have sworn it was something about um going off grid and all this stuff. And I thought, I am fascinated with that, you know. So
Oh,
that's
I am too. That's probably why I post about it because
okay.
I want to do that. So I grew up in my early childhood, we did live on and near two different intentional communities, aka communes. And since it was the 70s, I guess you could technically call them hippie communes. And it was people that were, it wasn't like culty or anything like that. But one of them was much more sustainably oriented than the other one. The other one was more like-minded people coming together to share ideas, but the second one was more like um, actually providing for each other and growing food, right, having big gardens and all the stuff. So,
Hmm.
but yeah, I've been feeling called back to that. As you can tell from the hair, right?
Yeah.
I'm channeling the 70s again.
That's
Um,
right.
but but yeah, I would love to, find some land and actually have a small intentional community. But this time I would want everybody to have their own separate homes.
Oh yeah.
We can homestead collectively, but we get to go home and close the door on each other, like
Yeah.
I don't want to live in the same house with anybody else
Oh,
ever
definitely
again
not. I like my
if
privacy,
I
but
can help it.
I've had this fascination and this dream for quite a long time, and I've shared it with a few people. I don't share it a lot, but I would love to have 50 acres and then just have, my family and a few friends. Everybody has their own home, and then we have a collective garden space. We have collective, animals, we do all that stuff. So it's basically the same thing, like what you were saying, is that,
Yeah.
and I can almost envision for me that there's this huge area that's like a little park where you can go out and you can cook out. And so everybody just kind of comes and, sits around and just has a good time. It just feels so amazing to think about that. That's why as soon as I saw something on one of your posts, it was like, oh my gosh, she does that. I
Well,
want to ask questions.
there's a lot of people that, would consider themselves intuitives who have said this is the direction we're heading in, that there's going to be soon, not like many years from now, but like in the next few years, a breakdown of infrastructure and goods and services not being able to get to us, and issues with the electrical grid and Wi-Fi being consistent and yada, yada, yada. All these things are going to sort of, and also all of these catastrophic weather, systems causing people to have to now start migrating away from where they've been for the last 30 to 50 to 100 years.
Yeah.
But all of these sort of things together are, um, this is the prophecy anyway, from both current modern day intuitives as well as Edgar Cayce and Nostradamus and the Hopi Indians, right? So we
Hmm.
have some ancient prophecies too, that we're going to be moving back towards that sort of simplicity and
Yeah.
small communal life. Because we don't need the huge infrastructure and being plugged into the grid and the matrix, as they're calling it now, if we have that. So yeah, and I've been feeling this way for a long time. But I was raising 4 kids and everything was hand to mouth, and like I've always had gardens and I've always had, just as much as, like, I make homemade yogurt, I make homemade bread, I make, all sorts of stuff from scratch, granola, all kinds of things. So I've always been kind of keeping a little bit of that thread running throughout my whole life.
Hmm.
But I'm ready. I'm ready to actually, like, I know how to milk cows and goats even. I mean, like,
Ooh,
I think
I
I
want to
would
come
be a
stay at
pretty good
your area
resource.
then, because I don't know how to do that. I don't know if anybody I know knows how to do that, but maybe they do. I don't know. I do have a sister
That
that
was
is
from the third
raising
commune that I
chickens and
lived on.
everything. Say that again.
Yep. chickens too. I lived on this anthroposophical biodynamic dairy farm in
What the
Pennsylvania.
heck is that?
Seven Stars Farm in the early 90s. I think it was the late 80s, early 90s, like 1989, 1990. I was only there for a couple growing seasons, but yeah. So
How
so that
cool
was
is
me as
that?
a pseudo grown up, a baby adult. um, living on a commune then too. And that's when I
Yeah,
learned how
there's a
to
theme
milk
going on
cows. And
here.
yeah, I kind of keep coming back to it, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
So
Would have
let
been a
me,
heck of a lot easier to raise my kids had I had something like that. Because when you're a single parent, if you have a whole community helping you,
oh yeah,
you know, it doesn't hurt so much to be a single parent. But
yeah, yeah.
alas,
I
inside
know I
things
only
keep
have
happening.
2 children, but I was a single parent too, so I understand that exceptionally
Yeah.
well. So one of the things I wanted to ask you about is like when you were growing up, what did you want to be?
I never had a specific thing. So,
No?
like, I mean, it changed a lot. Um, when I was really little, like I would say under 7, I was pretty positive that I was going to grow up to be a fairy.
Okay.
I was just waiting for my wings to come in.
I wanted to be
And then,
bewitched, if that tells you anything.
yes, I love that. I love that, Samantha and
Yeah.
Tabitha. Um, and then after that, I was in ballet for a while. So I thought, oh, I want to be a ballerina, you know, but that's a very short-lived career. So I would have already been done with that by now if I'd gone that route. Um, I landed in cooking because I dropped out of high school. And that was like a something my stepfather was like, you know, no daughter of mine is going to go out into the world without any skills whatsoever. And he's a Swiss trained chef. So that was his doing, you know, bringing me up to speed, doing the apprenticeship with all of that. Um, but I liked it, and I'm very creative. I love art, and so for me, food is just temporary art, right? But it's
Hmm.
also like the most important art in the world because it's what
Right.
like becomes part of the nourishment of the cells of our bodies. So I love cooking. So yeah, I don't know. I never had a specific thing. Like people have asked me that before, and I do not know how to answer. I think that early on, I think I knew that it was going to be quite a journey, you know, and that I was just open to whatever was going to happen on this crazy journey. I don't think this is my first time here.
Yeah.
I think I've
Yeah.
been here
I
a
don't
lot of
think so
times.
either.
Oh. So I was kind of like, all right, bring it on. What are we
Yeah.
going to do
Yeah.
this time?
Let's see what happens this time,
The
right?
sky is the limit.
Yeah. Yeah. So you also said that you had 2 NDEs.
Yeah. Yep. Um, the second one I don't remember as well.
When
I
were
don't know
they?
why. I just haven't. So the first one was I was 18 and I had just given birth to my first child, my daughter, and um, I had what was not yet a diagnosed, it was an undiagnosed bleeding disorder. And
Mm.
she had shoulder dystocia with a placental abruption. So those two things together caused me to lose 2/5 of my body's blood very rapidly. I could not clot. I hemorrhaged. And I was having a home birth. And so they had to call an ambulance, you know, paramedics come get me, take me to the nearest hospital. And I died. I died before they actually got there. I flatlined apparently, and they were trying to revive me in the ambulance. I'm not going to go into the whole NDE because that would take like another podcast or 5.
Yeah. Well, we'll do
Uh,
those later.
it was okay, but it was I learned a lot and I recalled a lot, and I realized. I mean, I came back with the knowledge and understanding that yeah, absolutely physical death is not the end. There was no question. It was just a no-brainer. I was like, yep, I don't even, it's not even a belief. It's just a hardcore knowledge. Um, and I also really liked it on the other side. I missed it. It felt like home. I was so happy to be back home. And there were others there that I was very familiar with. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad to be back with you again. And then I came back here and I was given an option. I was given an option. It wasn't like a, you have to go back. I was given an option. But with that option, there was the caveat that, well, if you don't go back, then you're kind of starting a whole new cycle of generational trauma for your baby girl who was just born, who's now going to grow up without either parent. And, that's going to be a bit of a mess that you're probably going to want to clear up later. So maybe just go back now. And you can't avoid all of the mess because there's still the missing dad who popped in and out of our lives for years. But you can at least take care of that part, right? The part that you're ultimately responsible for. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go back. And I had the best of intentions, and I was really like, yep, let's do this. We're going to go back. And I knew who my daughter was, as far as like our souls be like on the other side, the agreements that we had to sort of activate each other in this lifetime by being together here as mother-daughter, because that's what mothers and daughters do. That's our contract. We activate each other to become better people, usually through painful experiences. But anyway, I went through a lot of years of depression because even though I came back with the best of intentions, and it was very much a conscious choice, and there was no forcing about it. It was just so beautiful and peaceful and familiar over there. And it was really hard to be here. This is a very difficult place to be.
Yeah.
And
I've
I
had,
feel terrible that my daughter was raised by a mom who was just mired in the throes of depression after that.
but that was probably part of that contract too, right? Yeah.
Well, don't tell her that. She doesn't want to hear that. But yes. Yes. If you ask me.
Well, I've had a few friends that I've got have had NDEs, and every one of them says the same thing, that it was so beautiful there that even though they wanted to go ahead and come back and do whatever they needed to do, it was such an immersion of suddenly there's this pain from waking up from whatever caused the NDE, and then having to recoup and just make function through the world, that they suffered through some severe depression in the process. So it's amazing to think
I also
about.
had this like annoying habit of I kept falling out of my body when I would fall asleep.
Oh, wow.
That was really frustrating.
Yeah.
For about 6 months after that first NDE, I would just be sleeping, and then I would turn over in bed, but somehow my body wouldn't turn over with me. I was not fully attached anymore, I guess.
That's interesting.
And I would find myself up in the upper right-hand corner of the bedroom looking down at my body, which was exactly what happened in the ambulance. I was like looking down when I decided to come back. I saw myself and I was like, okay, now it's time to go back. And I couldn't figure out how to make myself stick. And I kept like dive bombing my physical body and like not sticking. I would just bounce back out again. This happened, I don't know how many times. There was nobody else left to ask either. Like all of the information that I had been receiving on the other side was silent. And I was like, you didn't give me the like re-entry instructions.
Yeah.
Like, what am I supposed to do here?
It makes me think of what is that movie? Oh gosh, where he dies and it's the animated thing and he's trying to get back. Oh God, what is it? Oh hell, I can't even remember what it's called. But anyway, one of the things he does is he keeps trying to go back onto Earth and be in his body, and he's jumping through this portal, and it recognizes every time that soul, that's what it is, soul, that he's not
That's the name of
supposed
the
to be
movie?
there.
Soul?
Soul, yeah.
Okay.
So he pops back
I'll
up,
have to watch that.
and it's like he keeps trying to dive into his body and it won't let him. Have you not seen
Yeah,
that?
I have not.
You should check it out. It's
I
really
think I
cool.
remember seeing like a trailer for it now that you've said the name though.
Yeah.
Did they kind of look like squiggly lines? Some of the people? Well,
Kind of.
anyway,
Yeah.
I'll look
Yeah.
it up. I'll look it up.
Yeah, look it up
But
because
yeah,
it's really cool. It's
I
got
did
some.
finally stick though, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
never did figure out the method to the madness. I never did. Like, I figured out how to prevent it, but I couldn't figure out what was causing it. So anyway, the thing that helped me to prevent it back then was having any other living creature like touching me. So a cat, a baby,
Okay.
well, a husband sometimes. But yeah, so if I had
So
my
it was like a
newborn baby
tether
daughter,
to here, right?
yeah, it would keep me from falling out of like I would still roll out of my body, but I wouldn't bounce up to the ceiling. I would just roll out of my body and be like, oh, and then roll back in again.
Okay. Well, that's fascinating.
Consequently, I've had cats my whole life, and they always sleep with me, which might be why the husbands don't stick around. I'm not sure. Anyway, actually, I'll take full credit for that.
Yeah.
So yeah, the second one I don't really remember, and I'm not actively trying to chase the memory of that one. I mean, I know what happened like chronologically that led to the near-death experience, but I don't remember what happened when I went to the other side.
Yeah.
My memory, I've repressed it.
Yeah.
And I'm not actively trying to chase it and figure out what happened because I've come to the conclusion after doing many regression sessions in my early hypnotist days that when a person is ready and has the tools to handle whatever it is their mind is repressing, then those memories will come to the surface. And I've recovered so many childhood memories just from healing stuff that I don't have to go chasing them,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is also why I'm not a huge fan of regression,
Yeah.
by the way. But
Yeah.
I'll do
So
it.
how
It
old
can be
were
very
you
powerful
with the
sometimes.
second one?
The second one, I was 33.
Okay. So there's a good
Yeah.
space between those at least. So
Yeah.
whatever it is that you're not ready to have download into you will be at some point, and then we'll hear all about that because it's probably something fascinating, but maybe it's like I feel like sometimes we have all these things that happen to us like our mosaic life to make us strong enough to handle what's the next journey that we have. And
Right.
so it's probably there's some kind of growth thing that's going to happen that puts you into that place, like you said, that healing
Yeah.
spot, right?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I hope. Who knows? But you know what? It's also not super important for my conscious mind to have access to those memories. My conscious mind is this big. So like if it gets it, it gets it. If it doesn't, it doesn't. That doesn't mean that the rest of me isn't having this big, beautiful, multidimensional experience. I do remember like tiny little things. It's just that it's all so um, spotty. It's hard to
Yeah.
make sense of. Like I remember there was information that came through that I had chosen many exit points in this lifetime because I knew this was going to be a tough one, that it was tough on purpose because I needed to sort of like a sculpture, like create the version of me that was going to be able to do the things that I wanted it to do later. But there was a very good chance that I would want to check out before then because of all of the challenges that I've chosen.
Mm-hmm.
So there was that information that I had many exit points, like in the double digits, and that I'd
Okay.
already passed by several of them. I got to see my last exit point. That's interesting.
Hmm.
And then there was also this one part where I was like, and I'm not typically a visual person, but it was very visual, both of my near-death experiences. So like one of the other little snippets that I kind of remember is I was looking over this like vast landscape, for lack of a better term, but it was like multiple landscapes. And like I was seeing all these different people as they were dying, having the experience that they expected, because that's what they were able to have. So, like, if they believe in Jesus, well, there's Jesus. If they believe in Muhammad, well, there's Muhammad. If they believe they're going to get 72 virgins, well, look at that. There's 72 virgins. If they believe in hell, there's some people going through some hell. Like, it was showing that whatever it was that they expected
Okay.
was what they get to encounter, but it's just a sort of a temporary little space before you move into where I was. And I
Okay.
guess maybe I got access to that because it was my second near death experience. I don't know. I don't know how I was able to get access to that. I was just shown that. And I was like, well, that's really interesting. So they're all right
Yeah.
or all wrong. It depends on how you look at it,
That's right. Yeah. Well, that's
Yeah.
that's kind of the way I look at our journey through life too, and I'm sure there are a lot of people that feel that way too. We get out of life what we expect too. So it's like, we
One
can
mirror.
focus on, certain things and that'll be what shows up. And so to me that's fascinating to think of that as well. It's
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So,
And I do agree with you on that. I think that, like if I start to have a lot of situations populating my life that have a certain theme to them, like that's a mirror to me of what's going on internally. I'm like, oh, I must be, bringing some of this stuff up to be seeing it reflected out there. And while that might sound very woo, if you look at it pragmatically, that's absolutely true. So let's say like, you're expected to go to a company party, but you just don't want to go. You're not a social person. You don't think anybody's going to want to talk to you. You're, whatever. So you're anticipating sitting in a corner by yourself. So you open the door, you walk in, your head's kind of down, you're looking around like, yeah, nobody's going to talk to me. And then people see you and they respond to that energy and they're like, she doesn't look like she wants to be talked to. Let's leave her alone. And then you create that, right? Because you expect that. But if you go and you're like, oh yeah, I haven't seen a lot of these people in so long, or maybe I haven't seen them out of the office or whatever, like this is going to be so much fun, and you walk in with a smile on your face, hey, how's it going? Suddenly, bam, whole different party.
yeah,
But
yeah,
all that's changed is your expectations and what you're perceiving of the people around you. So if you think that they're all going to not want to hang out with you or they're judging you or whatever, that's what you're going to see. That's what you're going to experience.
yeah.
But if you
And
think that
most of
they're
the
all there to
time
have a
we're
good time with you,
practicing that story in our heads for a long time before we ever get there. So it's like
yeah.
a rehearsal in a way. We're
Yep.
rehearsing how bad it's going to be before we ever get there. And so I share this story.
Catastrophizing.
Yeah. So I share this story a lot of times. I would meet my some people for lunch quite often. There was a big group of us, and there was one person there that used to grate my nerves. It was like she knew exactly what to say to just really tick me off the moment I got there, right? And so I always knew, oh, she's going to be there. And so the whole way there, I'd be thinking, oh, she's going to say this, and I'm going to say this, and I'm going to think this, and you know. And so once I started doing all this work, I decided that I was going to play a game with it. And I was just going to decide how I wanted it to go. And so for a couple of days before, I practiced, going to this luncheon and arriving and her saying, hey, I'm so glad you made it, and being really kind and sweet. And then we ended up sitting next to each other and we're having lunch and it's great. And then when I go to leave, she hugs me and says, I'm so glad to have connected with you today. This was fun. And then I leave. And so I practiced that and I rehearsed it all the way there. And
Beautiful.
damned if it wasn't almost the exact scenario. So I thought, there is so
Wow.
much power in this, right? And because it's the only time that I connected with her in exactly that way. And it's the only time I rehearsed it like that.
Well, and isn't that the foundation for hypnosis in a lot of ways? Like if you
Mm-hmm.
have a phobia of public speaking, but you envision yourself having a fantastic, public speaking event, or sports hypnotherapy, where the athlete goes through it over and over and over in their mind, how it's going to all play out in the best possible way. And then that increases their chances of it playing, because not only is it causing the neural pathways in their mind to make it familiar, but there's like information, I think, being sent to the cells of the body too,
Mm-hmm.
which is another dimension of consciousness. Because I firmly believe that the cells of our body have consciousness. It's not the same kind of consciousness that, inhabits maybe the neurons in our brain, but there's, I think, still a definite kind of type of consciousness. And so, yeah, what you're saying, like if you're sort of future pacing
Mm-hmm.
like that, and you're doing that with everything, just assuming the best out of every situation, you're gonna probably run into far more positive situations than negative,
Yeah, definitely.
life in general.
And I'm not perfect by any means, so I don't always do that. But that's one of the things that I'm constantly improving on is being able
Mhm.
to be more mindful with my self-talk, my language, and
Yeah.
and the things that I draw to me. And I have a Facebook group that I go live in every day with an affirmation and a journal prompt. And the funny thing that happens is at night before I go to bed, sometimes I'll work out, okay, this is what I'm going to be talking about tomorrow. And then I'll go to bed and I'll wake up in the morning and it's like, nope, that's not what you're going to be talking about. This is what's on your mind. And it changes so many times.
I call
And
those downloads.
yeah. And
Yeah.
what's interesting to me is that those times when it's like the next morning, I get up and it's a totally different thing. Those are the ones that people say, oh my God, this is exactly what I needed today and everything. And so I think, why don't I do that every time? But it's like, it just doesn't come every time, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, there could be lots of different reasons for that. Maybe that's not the day that somebody needs that, whatever that thing is. Maybe that's the day for you to practice coming up with the thing, right?
Yeah, maybe that's true. Yeah. That's a
So,
good way to look at it.
yeah, I mean, I feel like the downloads from our higher consciousness are available, but it's kind of like, your parent doing your school project for you. Like, it kind of, I feel like the highest self is kind of like patting us on the head and going, you're going to be okay. Go ahead. You can do it. You can
Yeah.
do it yourself. Here, I'll give you a hand, but I'm not going to do it for you every time, you know?
I love that. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. That one's funny. I love it. It's interesting when as doing this work and everything. And I will say that one of the things that fascinates me about you and is that this course that I'm taking with you, it's like, how long did it take you to develop this course? Because it is huge. It's magnificent. I mean, it is so
Almost no
well
time at
thought of.
all.
How much?
Almost no time at all.
For
Almost the
real?
entire course was downloaded into me. And I'm not even kidding. Sometimes it was downloaded while I was in meditation. Sometimes things would just get thrown into my noggin while I was in the middle of a session with somebody. And then I would be like, okay, I guess I'll do that. And I would do it. And then it would have this just profound effect on them. And I would go, oh, well, that changes things. What I found was that by just having the client's highest self be the take the lead,
Mm-hmm.
it took the pressure off of me, first of all, so I didn't have to deal with imposter syndrome anymore, thank goodness.
Right.
It took the pressure off of me because their highest self knows exactly what they need at all times and how best to support them and knows them far better than I could ever know them.
And better
And so
than
I could
they
just
know
take my ego out
themselves.
of it entirely. Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, okay, let's see. I started having, I guess, more woo-woo sessions totally by accident in 2021. Prior to that, I was trying to stick to like clinical, hardcore neuroscientific hypnosis because, my background in applied psychology, and I didn't want to be known as like the woo-woo hypnotist. And I kind of even looked down on that at the time a little bit. Like I was trying to distance myself because, I already have this whole new age upbringing.
Yeah.
So I was trying
And
to
you didn't want to
like
be accused of having the fairies again.
right. Yeah. Well, now I totally embrace it all because
I
I have
know, I
decided
know.
I absolutely adore my authentic self. There's nothing to be embarrassed about anymore at all, which has been part of this journey. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I started having clients just go into spontaneous past life regressions. And at the time, I just was like, well, I didn't intend for that to happen, but that's an interesting thing. I better learn everything I can about past life regression hypnosis so that at least I have like adequate tools, you
Mm-hmm.
know? Um, and I also thought at the time, and to some degree still leave some margin for this, that maybe it's past lives, maybe it's not. Maybe it's just what their subconscious mind needs to create a metaphor for in order to help them realize that they are beyond it now, that it is not just in the past, but it's so far in the past, it's in a whole other lifetime, right? And so they
Mm-hmm.
can just leave it there. Um, some things have happened since then that have made me think, I don't think it's always just a metaphor. Namely, that I had a past life regression where I went back to a lifetime where I was doing very similar work to what I'm doing in this lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't called hypnosis, but I was using trance states to help initiates in this priestesshood have these vision quests in a cave. Now, here's the crazy part. Two other of my clients had past life regression memories of being there with me. Neither of them had met each other at the time. Now they have, but at the time, like it happened and they didn't know about mine. I had not talked about it.
Oh, wow. That's
But
fascinating.
then they were like, "Oh, wait, and you're there too, Kryssa. Oh, I can see who you are." And anyway, so actually I had mine after one of my clients had hers, and then I had a past life regression. I was like, "Oh yeah, there I am. I see what she was talking about. That's me." And then another one had a similar one too, and it turns out that we were all three there. So bizarre. Anyway, the thing that made me like really start to change my perspective on things is that I was like, well, I mean, it's well and good to release all kinds of trauma and leave it in the past, but like I have some pretty kick-ass skills here that I would really like to bring into this life because they would benefit my clients now. Like this is
Mm-hmm.
a whole different way of doing hypnosis that I feel like has been lost to the ages. Can I just bring the skills? And my higher consciousness was very gleeful about this. Like, yay, you cracked the code. Like, yes, you can. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can go back and get not like word for word. It's not like, in the Matrix where you can download how to fly a helicopter.
Right,
It's not like
right.
that. But it's more like you get the enough of the information that now as you start to go forward, it like plugs in where it needs to make the program run easier and better and faster. And I made new connections. And so, anyway, the whole thing with Quantum Journeys Hypnosis, from the moment that I started teaching the first class and not thinking that it was going to be a course at all, I had no idea it was going to be a course. I thought it was just going to be a class, one class. And then I got more downloads and I was like, I think I need to have a second class. And then that kept happening. I ended up with 6 classes in like 8 months. And I
Mm.
was like, I think I'm supposed to turn these classes into a course. So then I backfilled and put some things in there that needed to be in there to make it into a course, and bam. So, like, less than a year.
Wow. Wow.
I
Because it
know it's
is,
like 50 plus hours long. It's pretty
yeah.
like all
Yeah. It's
inclusive.
like
It's like,
I
yeah.
have on my list of things to do every day. Part of it is spend at least 30 minutes, if not more, on part of the course because, it's one of those things that no matter how much you want to learn something, life gets in the way. And if you don't have something
I'll give you a
saying,
hint.
yeah,
If you watch the deep dives,
mm-hmm.
you'll pick everything up.
Okay,
Like,
because I'm
I
in the
want you to
deep
still go
dives
through the
right
whole
now.
course. But if
Yeah.
you watch those deep dives, you're going to like, it'll all click into place and you'll just get it. And so then when you're watching the rest of it, you'll be like, oh, right, of course. Like it will just become second nature.
Okay.
I've had people who have skipped over the deep dives. I've had people who skipped over the whole student resources section thinking, oh, well, that's not the part I'm going to be quizzed on the exam. So I don't need that. But the reason I put those in there is because that's where like the meaty, juicy stuff is. Like
Yeah.
that's where
Yeah.
this stuff is really going to help you as an individual and as a student. But yeah, those deep dives. That's where you're
Yeah.
going to get all the good
Okay, good.
all the
Because
good stuff.
that's where I'm at now is in the deep dive. So,
Perfect.
yeah. But it's like the other the other courses that I've taken and everything have all been amazing. But this is like I get maybe it's because now I'm ready for more that
Mm.
that it's available to me, but it feels like it's just the very next step of what I need for myself and to help my clients better.
It's very self-healing, just going through the course. And then
Yeah.
also when you get to the practice sessions with other students, yeah. I mean, this isn't me being arrogant because I can't even take full credit for it, but it has changed people's lives,
Mm-hmm.
my own included, very much so. Um, and it's not all from my tiny little human 3D brain. Like I'm not smart enough to have come up with all that stuff. And the fact that I was doing it not even fully consciously, like I was getting all the information and I was like, I'm supposed to teach this. Here we go. Let's go teach this. I'm still working, doing my one-to-one sessions and, my little like retreats and my diet groups and, all the stuff. Because I wasn't even really thinking about that becoming a course. And then when I suddenly realized I had enough content to turn it into a course, I was just like, well, let's just do that then. And at no point did it feel like work.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is because I didn't know what it was becoming. That
Mm-hmm.
information was not shared with me. Had I known that, I probably would have done the whole like procrastination dance and the fear of failure and like but because my higher self was very good about keeping that information from me until the very last minute. And then she was kind of like, well, you've already done it, Kryssa. Look, like you have 6 classes. All you got to do is just add in some history of hypnosis, a few little other things to like backfill and make it come together. You've got the course. And it was at that point that I was like, oh, I guess so. You're right. I don't have to be afraid of putting a course together. I already have a course. Now it's just a matter of actually like putting it together, right? But like I didn't have to create it from scratch. Had I thought that I was going to have to create it from scratch, I probably would have never done it,
Yeah.
honestly.
That would have been very overwhelming to think about. And that makes me think of, I'm with our Mosaic life, and I tell people all the time is that, all the things that happened to us actually made us strong enough and have the knowledge to be able to do what we're doing right now. And so all of those things that you went through was the thing that made you strong enough to actually fulfill what your higher self was asking you to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if it weren't for all of the challenges, and even just like some of them were downright devastating,
Yeah.
like beyond painful, traumatic. But if it weren't for those, I wouldn't have gained the skills and the perspective that comes from those experiences. Like there's gifts on the other side of those things, but the
Yeah.
only way to get the gifts is you have to go through them and you have to heal them. You have to
Yeah.
heal from them,
Right. Yeah.
And then once you do, there's these gifts. And it's not like the pain is suddenly not there anymore. And that's another thing that I know we don't have much time left to address, but I would love to address one little thing if I could.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
I don't even like to call my course spiritual hypnosis, because the word spiritual is just so loaded these days. And I see people using it in a way that I find incredibly toxic. For example, the abundance queens, that stuff. Um, there's nothing wrong with having an abundance mindset and working towards like manifesting your best life. But when you perceive somebody who has all of this money and this great house and these cars and this fantastic business and the good looking spouse and a perfect body as somehow they've cracked the code on being highly evolved because they have all of that stuff, that's toxic spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
The homeless guy on the street may very well be far more spiritually evolved than you or I could ever be.
Right.
And so this whole concept of like, well, if I'm living this perfectly spiritual life, I should have all of this prosperity to prove it, to prove that I'm like rewarding me for being such a good spiritual love and light person. I'm denying every negative emotion I have every day. Anger, what's anger? I don't feel anger,
Yeah.
Toxic spirituality.
Yeah.
Toxic. Anyway, so I don't even like to use that term to describe what I do or what the course does, though definitely it would fall in that realm. But I like to use things like, the science of multidimensional consciousness, or working with the frequencies of just the consciousness of life,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to using the term spiritual. I do
Yeah.
sometimes use the term because that's like kind of silly. It's a silly word. And so I'm like, who can get offended at that?
That's right. That's all right. I love it. Well, it's been fascinating, which I knew it would be. That's why I was so excited when I asked you if you would be on the podcast, and you said yes. It was like, yay.
Oh, well, thank you so much for asking me. It's an honor. It's an honor. And I'm sorry that it took a couple times for me to actually get here.
No worries. No worries. Things happen when they're supposed to, right?
Yeah. And I'm also sort of like notoriously shy. I know that sounds so crazy because I seem to be out there in the spotlight a lot, but like I'm very private.
Yeah.
And introverted. So not shy in the sense of like social anxiety, just like shy in the sense of like I tend to keep to myself
Yeah.
and not do stuff like this very often.
Well, then I
Every once-
definitely appreciate you stepping outside and coming on the show. And I like to say I'm an extrovert, introvert. So there's times I want to be out and, in front of people and popping up and doing all these things. And there's other times I want to stand back and just watch everybody else and listen or be all alone. And one of the things that's happened to me over the years is that I've become a person that really cherishes their alone time more than I ever did in my life. And I think that maybe sometimes that's from all this personal growth, because now I really like who I am. And I want to make sure that I'm giving my thoughts and my emotions the love that they need, right? Yeah.
Yes. And the cells of our body too. I think we
Yes.
forget that they have their, the reason I even bring this up again is because when we say negative things about our bodies to our bodies, those parts of our bodies hear us.
Yeah.
They hear us.
Yeah.
And so if there's something about yourself you don't like and you get mad at it all the time, the cells of that part of your body feel just like a little kid who's constantly being reprimanded when they're doing the very best that they can, you
Yeah.
know? And
Mm-hmm.
so if you give them love instead, if you give them love and you say, hey, what can I do to help bring you into a perfect state of health or balance or alignment? They're going to reveal to you what you need. You might have to go into a state of hypnosis first or meditation, in order to get the answer. Not everybody can get quiet enough to hear it, but you can get it. It's there.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you start with loving your body first, even though it's not the perfect body that you want, it will become a healthier, more balanced body over time because of the love, not the other way around. If you keep shaming it and getting mad at it all the time, it's going to do just like
And
what that little kid
depriving
does.
it, starving it.
Yeah.
Crazy
Yep.
stuff.
Depriving it, starving it, hating on it, it's going to get sick. It's going to get sick.
Yeah. I had one of my
rebel.
clients one time, one of her, she was a weight loss client, and one of her task that she was supposed to do was look in the mirror and see what is the part of my body that I'm always giving hell to, always. And then recognize that it's there as some kind of protection for whatever it is that you need. Go ahead and love on it and touch that part of your body and just, think about it as a part of you that you love, and then let everything else come as it will. And
Right.
it was a beautiful, beautiful experience for her. And she said that when we first started our process, she couldn't even look in the mirror at her face and say, I love you. So it was very profound to
It really
help her.
liberated her.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was beautiful. But when you were talking about the cells, one of the other things that that comes to mind too is the Emoto water experiment. It's the looking at the water and the words and different thing and how that changed the ice crystals and stuff. So those that are listening or watching and you're not familiar with it, just Google it. You'll see all kinds of things about it. But every time we say those hurtful words or those things that are not so kind, maybe we don't think they're hurtful. Some people say them as a joke, but our body doesn't take it as a joke. It takes it as fact.
Right.
And we're damaging those crystals, that water in our body. And we are I hear such a different amount. Some people say 85, some people say 90% water. I have no idea. I'm not a
Well, whatever
scientist.
it is, it's a lot.
Yeah, it's a
And it
lot.
holds
It's a lot.
memory. It holds
It's more
memory,
than
it
our
holds
meat suit.
frequency. Yeah. And I would venture to guess that most people who talk to themselves in those really harsh, critical, negative ways don't think of themselves as bullies. That is absolutely what they're doing to
Yeah.
themselves.
Yeah.
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 Meanwhile, their poor body is just think about the fact that our bodies are always bringing us back to the best possible state of health they can. Every infection we have, our bodies just do everything it can, pull up the white blood cell count, go into a battle with having the immune system battle whatever the infection is. Every cut you get heals up. Every bruise fades, every break knits back together. I mean, our bodies are constantly showing us how much they care and they love. And here we are bullying because they don't look a certain way.
Yeah.
I feel so bad. I mean, I feel so bad even for my past body. I was anorexic. in my teen
Oh,
years, which later went into bulimia, then into binge eating. I've been all over that's why the very first thing that I specialized in was disordered eating, as a hypnotherapist. And I still work with it a fair amount, but yeah, like if we have to start with love.
yeah.
We
Yeah.
have to.
Yeah. And that's a beautiful place to end this podcast today,
Leave with
is
love too.
with
Start and
love.
end with
Yes,
love.
yes.
It's the glue that holds the universe together is
That's
love.
right. That's
Yes.
right. And so do you have any one last thing that you want to say other than love one another or love yourself more than anything? Is there anything else that you want to say before we close?
Just I don't know if you're going to put links up or whatever, but if
I
people
will.
want
Yes.
to like enter into my little world and learn a little bit more about what I'm doing, you can go to kryssamariebowman.com and you can find the link to my hypnosis academy there, and all kinds of other stuff. And if you're on Facebook and you happen to be a professional hypnotist, I also have two groups that I run. One is Hypnotherapy Uncensored, and then the other one is Quantum Journeys, which is actually not just for hypnotists, it's for anybody. So yeah, that's how you can kind of find out a little bit more and interact with me directly.
Yeah.
But
Beautiful.
remember that I'm a little bit introverted, so it might take me a bit to get back to you.
Well, in the description, I will put all the links so that they can just
Okay.
click on the link and get straight to wherever you are. And so I will tell everybody, you definitely want to dive into the things that Kryssa is doing, because she is amazing. And I will leave everybody with my favorite quote. And I wish I could remember or maybe I knew at some point who said this quote. So if anybody wants to give me that information, that'll be great. But the best way to predict the future is create it. So I ask, what are you
I've heard that
creating?
attributed to Benjamin Franklin.
Is it Benjamin Franklin?
I think he says something about being the architect. I don't remember how he put it, but
Okay.
anyway, I think I remember him.
Okay, I should Google it, I guess. I just haven't. I figure I'll just say it. So it's one of my favorite quotes, because I think one of the things that I love about it is that predicting it is not just a thought process, it is an action process too. And I think a lot of things get lost we just sit back and think that everything's just going to fall into our laps. And sometimes that does happen, but most of the time we have to at least take this inspired action to make it come together. And so that's why I like
Well, I
that
feel
one
like
so
the
much.
inspired action is kind of like the way of telling the universe and your highest self, like, yep, I'm ready for that.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
And actually I did think of something that I
Okay.
would like to share. And it is that, because you were bringing up your favorite quote and one came to me, Arthur Schopenhauer. It's a quote from him. He's a physicist from back in the 30s. All truth passes through three stages. The first stage, it's ridiculed. The second stage, it is opposed, or I think he said violently opposed. The third stage, it is finally accepted as just being self-evident. And I think that's about where we're going to be pretty soon with the concepts of the science of consciousness.
I
Very
agree.
self-evident here within the next few years.
Yeah, you can tell a difference in the collective consciousness just by the things that are more the movies that are coming out and the stories that are coming out, the podcasts that are coming out. So it's definitely, you can see this change in things. And so it's beautiful. I love it.
Well, thank you so much. It was quite an honor to be on your podcast. Thank you, Vickie.
My pleasure. And thank you. And thank you everyone for watching, listening, and make sure to like, subscribe, and share. All right. So I will see you soon. Mwah.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye. Mwah.